An affinity group is a group of people who are linked by a common characteristic, interest, or purpose. An affinity space is a place where people who may share a common identity can connect and form a community. These spaces allow for positive identity exploration and prepare these groups for meaningful interaction in larger communities. In this film, we are exploring the benefits of affinity spaces and looking deeper into how they make their members feel supported within their community and K-12 education. In order to get a first-hand account of particular affinity spaces, we interviewed members from KU's Black Student Union and KU Chinese Students and Scholars Friendship Association. We strive to understand their thoughts and feelings about being in their particular affinity spaces and how it has helped them connect to those within the group and support their education experience. We first asked Max from KUC SSFA who makes up his group.
Are many Chinese students from the mainland China, so we're all international students, but sometimes some Asian American students also join us. We have a pretty equal balance of male and female, so gender are pretty equal in our organization.
We then asked Stacy from BSU the same question as we did Max.
BSU is made up of a lot of different types of people, different kinds of people, not just African American students, not just young or traditional students, but students from all different backgrounds, all over the country, different racial and ethnic makeups. I think the biggest thing that we have in common is that we are just looking for that sense of familiarity, that sense of belonging, and so it's made up of people that are different but share common ideas.
We then asked each of them how their affinity spaces make them feel connected.
I feel connected because we try to help everyone discover who they are as a person, no matter what their background is or what their opinions or thoughts are, but just who they are first, and then how you work in the world around you. So it makes me feel connected because it first helps me to connect to myself and then connect to others.
I feel connected to the Chinese Student Association because I am from mainland China and I am in a foreign country, so that makes me bond pretty well with this organization.
Foreign exchange students, such as the Chinese students, find that when they come over to America, their social class does not come with them. Instead, their social class and access to opportunity changes, for social class can be seen as a socially constructed idea. Max then opens up about stereotypes he encounters in everyday life.
Like all of my friends, they are studying Chinese at KU. And their textbooks are using some very, very old-fashioned examples and pictures to teach them Chinese. So right now we are in 21st century. So I feel like, and also in our generation, we know what's the new trend or pop culture, and also we have learned Chinese culture and like these kind of stuff systematically in high school. So I feel like if we hold some event or we lead some topics to discuss, we know what to do. Like we know how to instruct people, and we know what's the proper things to show people, to expose them to the real Chinese culture, and to show them the real China.
As Max mentioned in the video, many minority groups are misrepresented in formal education. Similarly to the image of American Indians, the image of Chinese students presented in textbooks lacks currency and is embedded with stereotypes. Because whiteness determines the norms in our society, white people hold the power to construct the image of minority groups within the dominant population. These identities are socially constructed, then used in our minds to influence how we think about ourselves and other people. Affinity spaces provide a space to challenge these stereotypical narratives and partake in identity exploration with people who have shared experiences and similar perspectives. In addition, affinity spaces provide a platform for students to influence the way their culture is viewed by the dominant society. These spaces give students the power and support to freely express their culture and share a more authentic version of it with their peers. For students who are not familiar with the dominant culture, affinity spaces allow those students to acclimate to that culture and gain cultural capital that they may not have had otherwise. These spaces encourage them to embrace and expand their own culture while becoming accustomed to the dominant culture with people who are facing a similar task. Stacy then explains why affinity spaces are particularly important for her as a Black woman.
It's kind of hard to explain, but I liken it to there's experiences as a woman that I'm going to have that only another woman can really understand. In that same way, there's experiences as a Black woman, being a student and going through that educational system that I'm going to have, and obstacles that I'm going to have that really can at times only best be understood by someone who's experiencing the same thing. So that is how and why I think it's so important to have a place in a space that you can come together with people that are going through the same experience and can relate to you. And a lot of times administrators or other entities, they just don't get it because they're not having that same experience. So I think that is how BSU supports students through getting through those obstacles that are really specific to their own experience because of who they are.
We then delved into the topic of conversations that take place in affinity spaces.
When we discuss things that are happening currently in our world, like current events, that it's productive, again, because of that perspective, because of our experiences, because of just who we are. It's a more productive conversation because we can relate to it, it's closer to home. But then the other side of that is that being students and being in a place where, we're really starting to find out what we want to do and what we want to be and what kind of impact we want to have on the world. When we combine that with our experiences and the knowledge that we're gaining, I think that discussing current events is really productive in this kind of setting.
For the majority population, white people have the privilege of being amongst white people most of the time. This does not hold true for minorities, which is why affinity spaces are so necessary and vital to create a sense of familiar community. For Stacy, being in the presence of people who identify as both the same gender and race provided a sense of comfort and shared experience. For example, Stacy finds it much easier to talk about certain topics in current events at BSU than she would in any other group setting. Stacy's identity is comprised of being both Black and a woman, showing that there are multiple layers to one's identity. Being able to peel back those layers of someone's identity is referred to as intersectionality. Intersectionality recognizes that there are multiple layers to identity, such as race, social class, and gender, that are interconnected, which may result in overlapping and interdependent forms of discrimination or prejudice. Affinity spaces are a critical part of our society. Although there are prominent positive aspects shown by their members, there are also some negative aspects that are correlated with these spaces. They are created and exist due to gaps unfilled by society. Racism, discrimination, xenophobia are examples of boundaries standing in the way, eliminating these types of spaces altogether. We must work together in the K-12 setting to break down these barriers and make society a place where all people can feel connected. In order to reach this goal, we can begin working on the classroom environment. After hearing our presentation, we want everyone to think about how will you break the barrier and go beyond the affinity.